Thank you for being here. My name is Amy Sage Webb. I teach English and I direct the creative writing program. I serve as one of Kansas Leadership Center's faculty in residence here at ESU with my colleagues Mallory Kochi and Gary Wyatt. We are very happy to see you all here today. We have been disturbed about recent events on our campus. And we wanted to step into that disquiet and see if we could create some kind of conversation that could help to move us forward toward meaningful change, future conversations, and action. This is risky. You have some handouts from the Kansas Leadership Center. Leadership is an activity, not a position. We're trying to act this rather than look to those in positions of authority to do it. Anyone can do it. We're trying to do that. It's risky. This is risky, what we're trying to do here today. I've been at ESU for 20 years. I know a lot of you in a lot of different contexts. I have been sexually harassed throughout my life and in every single job I've ever had, including this one. I've been sexually assaulted more than once. I've been female in America all my life, folks. And what is extraordinary and grotesque about my experience is that I don't know a single woman who can't say, me too. But this is not a woman problem. This is not a victim problem. This is a social sickness. It affects all of us. It is serious, and we need to make some progress on it. It is so widespread, we need to make some progress. And yet, even though I know that, I have been so paralyzed to talk. Why? Is it shame? I don't think so. It's because most of the conversations that I experience are not very productive. We have a mode for what we call the town hall meeting, and it's focused predominantly on two things: prevention and punishment. Those two things are important. When something terrible happens, we want to prevent it from happening to anyone else. We want to punish the perpetrators. Those things are part of our conversation, but those aspects become so loud that they can prevent us from talking about anything else. And if there's one thing we know, if all of these people have been affected by sexual harassment and by sexual assault, it's not over for them when that conversation ends. They go on to successful lives and careers, but they carry it. They carry the distrust in their colleagues, in their institutions, in their communities. Those people who silenced them, who gaslighted them, who disbelieved them, that's damage. And we will not make progress as a social system, here at ESU, or as a society, if we can't have a bigger conversation than prevention and punishment. There will be some administrators here today, some human resources people will be here today, but it is not the purpose of this forum to provide Q&A with the heads of state. This is about us. This is about us, our community. We want to use the Kansas Leadership Center adaptive leadership model because we think it provides a framework. We're going to spend a little bit of time at the beginning here trying to get us thinking about this problem at ESU within a broader context, because we do not exist in a vacuum. And then we're going to move to looking at ESU specifically as a system and what we can do to begin to address why this happens repeatedly and how we're going to make progress on making ESU a less fertile place for this cultural sickness. We will spend the majority of our time on that, and we will end this forum today seeking some input from you about the kinds of things you would like more information about and what you lend to moving us forward. Thank you.
Many of you probably know, if you've seen the university's mission statement, that it is to prepare students for rewarding careers, lifelong learning, and then adaptive leadership is mentioned. And that's what we're going to use today to help tackle this problem. Adaptive leadership is an approach to leadership that has a couple of really important qualities that make it different from other kinds of leadership. The first thing it does is it separates what we call a technical problem from an adaptive challenge. Let's see if I can get. And one of the biggest, most important adaptive challenges we face here on campus is Goal 5 of our strategic plan, to become a model for diversity, equity, and inclusion, to create the kind of campus and climate, the kind of environment where everyone feels welcome and everyone feels safe. And if you think about it, how we treat each other in regards to sexual harassment and assault links directly to the other kinds of mistreatment that are going on. We really can't separate them that well. But the problem is how then do we create a culture? How do we create a system where these sorts of things don't happen? And so we're going to explore that today. We're tying this in, though, to Goal 5 of the university's strategic plan. This is one of the most important things we do, and this is what's called an adaptive challenge. What makes an adaptive challenge different from other kinds of problems? They cannot be solved by authority figures or experts. They can only be solved by stakeholders, by people at the grassroots level who really care. And it takes a great deal of work. It isn't easy. We are a society that really has come to like the quick fix. Everything from fast food to pain relief, to anything, you name it, we want action and we want it now, we want the problem fixed and we want it fixed right now. And what we learned with this kind of leadership is that it's a challenge. It's difficult to make that kind of progress unless we all get involved. And even then, it takes time, it requires experimentation. We move forward here just a little bit. One of the biggest failures that leadership exhibits is failing to distinguish technical problem from an adaptive challenge. A technical problem is something that can be fixed by edict. An authority figure can fix it. You can fix it by taking a pill. Some new invention may fix it. And there's something about our minds. We have this default. And the default is we want everything to be like that. We want it to be something that our leaders can fix or that an expert can fix. Come in with some new policy, some new strategy that just quickly makes the problem go away. And what we're suggesting today is this is the kind of problem that doesn't lend itself to that. We all need to work together. No one can save us but us. So, biggest failure is to not distinguish a technical problem from an adaptive challenge. And what's the difference between the two? You've all been given a handout. And this is not going to be a lecture format. We're going to get through this quickly and then you're all going to get talking. But here are some of the things that are really important to keep in mind. A technical problem, something that can easily be fixed by an expert or an authority figure, is very easy to identify. It often lends itself to quick and easy solutions, and we love them. We want the world to be that way. And we want usually somebody else to fix it. Can be solved by an authority figures or experts, and we'll mention that we are grateful that we have a lot of members of the administration here today. We're glad that they're here, and seeing them here and inviting them to come was a little bit of a two-edged sword, though. On one hand, if they don't come, people will say, well, they didn't care enough to come, and if they do come, people might be inclined to say, well, can we really talk now with them here? But despite that fact, they're members of the community. They have an important part to play in this. And so I think, for the most part, their role is going to be to simply listen. And we hope that you feel like that you will be able to share your views. So, we're on technical problems, required change in just one or a few places. People are very receptive to technical solutions because they're so easy. They can be fixed quickly by somebody else, and they do not require any effort or sacrifice on our part. Solutions are often implemented quickly, even by edict. Adaptive challenges, though, are what we are facing here in trying to become the model of diversity, equity, inclusion, and creating the kind of a campus environment where everyone's safe and welcome. We can't just come up with a policy that makes that happen, or a ruling of some kind. There's no magic pill. Difficult to identify, easy to deny. Adaptive challenges often require us to have changes in our values, our beliefs, the way we work, the way we conduct ourselves, and they are not easy. Stakeholders, like all of you, need to do the work. We need to spend some time today talking about what each of us is willing to do to help make progress on this issue. People even resist acknowledging that they exist or that they are a problem. And finally, solutions require a great deal of experimentation. So those are some important things to keep in mind. Most of the problems in the world today are one or the other or some combination of those two. But our default is to make everything a technical problem so that it can be easily fixed, usually by an expert or an authority. So, does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Am I next still? Oops.
No.
Okay.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I usually don't use a mic, so hi everyone. So I, again, am Mallory Cote, and I teach for the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies here on campus. And I am overjoyed at how many people are here today, but it also makes me a little sad because I realize how far-reaching this problem is, that so many of you are affected by it, that you're here today using your time with us. So I do really appreciate everyone being here. So when Dr. Wyatt was talking about adaptive versus technical, this is something that we can apply to our topic at hand, because when we think about sexual assault and we think about sexual harassment, this is not a technical problem, and technical fixes aren't going to work. They might make some progress, right? There might be a little bit of improvement with some technical fixes, like laws and policies or firing someone. But really what we're looking at is an adaptive idea, an adaptive challenge. So when we deal with adaptive challenges, we can go through a process that can kind of let us better understand how it is adaptive. So we can make observations, we can interpret what we see in those observations, and then we can intervene, we can do something. So one of the questions and one of the things that we'd like to get your feedback on, hear your voice, is that when it comes to sexual assault or it comes to sexual harassment, what is going on in your own personal and observations that contribute to this problem? So in other words, how do you see this in your own life? In your own experiences, what do you observe? So we're actually going to take some of your ideas, those of you who would like to share, that you feel comfortable today, and we're going to put some of these on these boards to kind of see what do we have in common, what can we suss out as ideas that we observe this in our lives, in our own personal experiences.
And even if you haven't personally experienced something, what do you see maybe in the way we've organized ourselves, in the way we conduct our business, that would create an environment where this could flourish?
Yeah. So does anyone, we'll pass around mics so we can hear you very well and put that up here, but does anyone have something they'd like to share? Do you think you observe something that contributes to this problem?
We try to silence the victims. When they come forward and talk about it, we either don't take them seriously or you don't do anything about it. So even if they keep trying to talk about it, it's still not taken seriously.
Riffing off of what she just said, we not only silence the victims, but it becomes such a part of our culture that we kind of become immune to it because we have had so much of this come out and nobody does anything, and so it just continues to be something that is a problem that nobody does anything about.
Can I ask you to bring that to your own life a little bit? Where have you observed it? I agree with you. Where does this live for you? Where have you seen that happen?
The media, and just in general, and institutions, ESU, but specifically the media. not necessarily in my own life, but I see it in the media, I see it in books, I see it in all those places like that.
I'd argue that a lack of education helps also lead to the problem. Some people would argue that more extreme encounters of sexual harassment only qualify, whereas the minor things such as just simply unwanted touching, some people would say they don't qualify as sexual harassment. Any sort of touching or violation of personal bubble really can be defined as sexual harassment. I don't think enough people realize that.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, go right here. Then I'm
Hi, I wanted to know if I could have your time to tell you about what happens to a sexual assault victim when it happens on this campus and give you that personal experience so you know the process, what happens at Emporia State University. Would you be okay with that?
Can you tie it into our observations of how sexual assault exists?
I think it will show some of the problems that happens because of our culture with sexual assault. Is that okay?
We don't want to silence you. We just want to make sure that we're keeping talking about observation. So let's hear it.
Through my observation with my own
Yeah.
personal experience, I was sexually assaulted 7 years and 1 month ago. When I turned in my case, I was told that there was going to be a campus trial, and if the person did not confess, they ended up confessing, and therefore I was told that I was not allowed to tell the results of the trial because that would be exploitation of the other student and that he was going to receive counseling. I was told that if I told anybody the results of that the campus and the perpetrator would be at grounds to sue me for exploitation. I was then stalked by this person and attacked on the middle of campus. And so I had to get a restraining order, and I turned it into the campus, and the perpetrator kept following me to class, and every time I went to go up to talk to the administration, he was there talking to them as if they were working together, and nothing was ever happened. I called the campus police several times. I had to get a restraining order for 5 years. And when I went to the judge to get an extension on the restraining order, the perpetrator told the judge that he had been places that I had been. I didn't even know it because he was allowed to on this campus. And first of all, I feel like administration failed me. I did not feel safe at this campus. I was treated so poorly in my theater major, which is my passion and my love, that I had to change my major, and I decided to change it to nursing. And so now I'm a nurse. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with my life, but I wanted to help others. And so that took away that from me. I can't even take pictures or for the new job that I work at and the new clinic that I work at or give interviews because I'm always afraid that he will know where I'm at because this campus failed me. And I have something to say to the administrators who failed me today. I forgive you. And I didn't find out about Title IX until afterwards, and I want a change because, I moved on with my life, but there needs to be a change on this campus because this can't happen again. I don't even think that report was given in the sexual assault reports that are happening each year. I don't even think mine was put into that. So we need a change on this campus, and that's what happens when someone is sexually assaulted and physically attacked and stalked on this campus. So I hope that you all can make a change today and that we can have forgiveness and make a change and move forward. Thank you.
Is there another hand up?
A couple things came out
Oh, right here.
that I want to point out is that in this story, we saw that there was a lot more than the incident. The observation that I take from this is that our focus on the incident might preclude so much else that we just heard. Being stalked, being threatened, the problematized relationships with others, That is not typically part of this discourse, is it?
So one thing I've been noticing over the past month is that ESU seems to be a grounds for a lot of controversy. And I've been doing my own personal research on campus to see a lot of the problems that we are facing. And I've noticed that there's a supreme lack of any sort of administration or administrative intervention in these cases. I've done research on several different cases, but the one thing I've noticed is that those of us who are the most at risk of being harmed seem to be the ones who are getting harmed. And what I mean by this is that the CECE, the child care, forgive me, I don't remember the rest of the acronym, ever since 2014, I've counted around 20 different incidences of issues with safety, regulation, security, the list goes on. April 8th, 2015, there was the incident with Mrs. Hale, where she found a racial epithet in her office. And though the conclusion of said system, or of said allegation, concluded that there was no racial discrimination, the actual investigation did not start until July 1st, nearly 3 months after the initial report. So the problem that I've noticed is that there seems to be a lack of desire on this campus to even begin to help those who are being harmed.
So what do you think you could do to change the campus? I really appreciate your pain. It's very legitimate. It is easy to always make it about the administration, and one of the things we want to do here is make it about us and what can we do.
I want to quickly wrap up the number of things we've populated this board with, just in our observations. A quick set of observations. Victim silencing is something we have observed in our culture. A saturation of images, something that we've observed. A lack of education about what assault or harassment really are. We've observed threats. We have observed stalking. We have observed legal action or the lack thereof. We have observed interventions or the lack thereof. We have a list of things we have observed.
So now the harder bit, I mean, not that this wasn't hard to put this up here and to talk about it out loud, is to interpret it. So what is it that's going on in our culture that contributes to this problem? So we made observations, right? And these aren't exhaustive by any means. But what is it that is part of our culture? What is going on that contributes, that helps to sustain this issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault?
Can we interpret?
I think that there's a lot of fear and a lot of shame going into people not being willing to, tell what happened or talk about it. It's gotten to the point now where it's almost the woman's fault if something does happen. It must be the way she's dressed or the way she's walking or what she's doing. And that in itself needs to be addressed. That we shouldn't be ashamed, we shouldn't be afraid, and people should take action immediately. It shouldn't have to take over a year before something is acknowledged.
Thank you.
So other interpretations, I mean, that's tough to hear, right? That it's somehow the victim's fault. And even though we might say that it's not, what other behaviors do we do that might imply that it really is in our control to prevent this from happening to us, or that we're responsible?
What do we think gives rise to some of the things we've observed? What do we interpret going on there?
Well, I understand that you guys said that this is an adaptive challenge, but if you put a label on it, then it becomes one thing, and that just leads to division. So the administration itself also needs to work with the student body. We can't do it on our own. It has to be a collective effort. It's not an us versus them. Exactly.
That's something that goes in our observations is that there doesn't seem to be collaboration. Is that a good observation? Why do we think that's so? Let's interpret that.
I understand that it's important for the students to take action against this, but I didn't come to this university to fix the problems that were embedded in this university. And that's an issue that I'm definitely seeing a lot. Like, I do understand that we do need to take action. However, piggybacking off of that, we cannot be the ones responsible to fix this problem. We come here to learn, and we should come here to be safe and to have our lives enriched. We shouldn't be here to be afraid and to fight this institution that allows this to keep happening.
So would you say that your interpretation is that by having no collaboration, that the burden falls on the students then, right? Or the potential victims, that they are the ones that are supposed to fix this problem, right? And so that again, that's hard to hear, that it's your responsibility and not all of our responsibility.
As long as I could. This idea of secrecy is what keeps everything as the status quo. When you silence the victims, when you have processes in place to where that, for example, junior faculty who are trying to get tenure and promotion and are afraid to even report any kind of problem for fear that they might not get promoted, they might not get tenure. Even if a student propositions them, you can put that down as an observation, or anything that has been going on. The problem is silence. We have to be able to speak out.
Thank you. We have one up here.
Right here.
What do you think? How do you interpret some of these things that are going on?
Well, from what I can tell, how with some of the issues, like, for example, like with the whole secrecy thing, just to add on to that, like, if we don't keep these things secrets, some policies say that they actually punish the victims in which we shouldn't punish the victim for their own burden.
I want to call attention to what we're doing here.
Sure.
Mallory asked for us to observe things that had happened in our own lives, our own experiences, right? And she asked us to interpret some of the things that we saw happening. And we kept adding observations, right? Why do you think that's going on? You don't have to have an easy answer.
It's easier to observe than to interpret.
Isn't it? It's much easier to observe than interpret. And sometimes we jump to the interpretation, but we don't know what observation it was linked to. So linking those two things is going to be important to us making progress, isn't it? And we're going to move on pretty quickly here to looking at ESU more intensely, but there's a little bit more to this.
So when we think about the third component about what we can do,
one more
right?
comment, right? Can we do
one more comment?
Yeah. I have like an actual interpretation.
Oh, good.
So after looking at the things that we have observed as a campus, I would say the interpretation is that that like people are just scared of getting like a bad label. So when we talk about bad things, people label us as a bad institution. So they think if they keep it, covered up and things like that, that people won't see us as a bad thing. So I think that's how I interpret keeping secrets and things like that.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
I think we should point out that one of the things that KLC asks us to do is to make tough interpretations. We've made a lot of observations and interpretations about what other people do or fail to do. Where were we? Where were we?
So I'm going to have you all think about as an intervention, as something that we can do. That I'd like you to consider, what is it that we can personally do? So it's not one group's sole responsibility to solve this problem, right? Or to make progress on it, or do anything for it. But what could we do to make some kind of change with these observations that we see, these manifestations, with these interpretations of what we see? So what are some ideas? What can we do as individuals?
I know from personal experience that I have heard, like, you hear of low-term things like, oh, she's faking it for attention, oh, it's not real, all of this stuff, kind of stuff. Yes, there are a lot of people here taking this seriously, but there are a lot of people who don't take this seriously, and I think we don't call them out enough, myself included, because it's scary. It's very scary to come out and say to someone, that is not okay. So I think that is something we can all do, is say, this is a very serious issue. You need to take this seriously.
So calling people out when you see it in your space, when you see something. Where? Okay, up here. Okay.
When I was an undergraduate, I served as a rape peer counselor. This was back in the 70s. And frankly, it's appalling that we're having the same conversation today. But what I'd like to say to the students here is that you are not alone. You have each other. And we got together collectively as students. We did not rely on the university. We helped each other. When a woman came in and I was on duty and she told me she had been raped, I did everything I could to help her, whether it was just sitting there and listening, or whether it was going with her to the emergency room, standing by her when the police interviewed her, going to court with her, and yes, going to administration and helping just by being there her through that process. And I will tell you this, collectively, you are the most powerful group on this campus. And the change you want, you can't affect, but you have to do it together. We can't expect these victims to stand alone.
So one of the things on our observations is that we have a lack of education existing, and so a person could interpret that as not knowing what we need to do to educate or not having found the right solution yet. And so since acting experimentally is one of the categories under intervening skillfully, I think that something we could do is just be willing to experiment and be willing to try things that might not work, and take a risk in that regard, both collectively when it comes to the university standpoint, but also individually when it comes to our inner circles and interpersonally with each other.
Taking people seriously is incredibly important. I know a lot of us have been sexually harassed or assaulted, but the problem isn't only with women. Men can be sexually harassed and assaulted as well. All genders, whether you're transgender, male, female, black, white, gay, straight, anybody can be sexually harassed or assaulted, and we need to take that seriously. I don't think it's taken into consideration enough. So definitely realize, even if you feel like you're underrepresented, you're not. There are people here that are going through the same thing.
Somebody else there?
Something I see is that people are so quick to make excuses for the perpetrator, and I think that doesn't need to happen. There's no reason to put the blame on the victim if the person knows what they're doing. The perp knows what they're doing, then we shouldn't make excuses for them. And I see that happen all the time.
You can stop that, can't you, in your space?
Yeah, you can.
But like it was said over here, that's scary.
Yes, it is.
But it's our world, and courage is a big thing. Thank you for that. Can you stand right up here one? Okay.
So, the whole purpose of this meeting is to figure out what we can do about this environment. And I'm having a lot of questions, or I'm observing a lot of questions that you are asking of us of what we can do. Well, I think one of the things that we can do is what we're doing right now, sitting here in this hall, speaking on the mic, telling you that, or of all of the instances where this campus has failed us and how it's continuing to fail us. And rather than talking about actual solutions, we haven't really done anything up to this point. And quite frankly, I wonder myself if this meeting isn't simply just lip work, or if there's anything that's going to be done after this.
Well, stick with us. We got a roadmap here. But I do notice that we're deflecting a lot about what institutions can do. But we are institutions. You told this story, this powerful, amazing, brave story. And all I can ask is, where was I? What could I have done? What is it about my role as a faculty member that seems to blind me to other things I could have done to make that easier for her?
And hold administration accountable.
How do we do that?
Fire the perpetrators.
Okay. Let's say we fire them all. Let's say that we fire all the bad apples. We're going to get them again if we don't address what gave rise to them in the first place. I don't say that technical solutions don't make progress, but if you simply get rid of one individual and you do not address the system problem that made it possible in the first place, you will get the same thing over again. And that is why, as Dr. Smith said, we're having the same conversations. Because we want that head on a platter, and then we forget about the other parts of change.
Firing may be something that really does need to happen, but the thing that I would really caution you is, once the firing is done, or whatever, or the new policy comes in, or whatever else, if you think you fixed the problem, you haven't. The problem, the real system problem, has got to be addressed by us. Yep, okay, so. One more, okay.
So my problem with this is that we're talking about adaptive problems, which is fine, it's great, but we have two problems present here, one that is technical and one that is adaptive. And I think that
that's fair.
I feel like we're skipping a process here. Without ever having discussed the technical issue, we're skipping to the adaptive issue. And I think that's why we're having a hard time transitioning into that, because we're having conversations without ever having the conversation that most necessarily needed to be had. So expecting us to talk about what we can do is difficult when we aren't even discussing why we're here in the first place. And I think giving us the guys that we should know, because we all showed up, like we're here to have a discussion about this particular issue, and I think that comes as a priori question before we engage in adaptive
We don't think we know. We don't expect anyone to know. We've got to figure this out. And I don't look in society and see where anyone's really done it. It's happening everywhere, and I think we're all part of the solution, and hopefully we can leave today with a roadmap for what we can do next.
We may be part of the solution, but we don't have any authority to make a change. And it goes through administration. All we have is a voice. That doesn't mean anything's going to happen.
That administration is part of the problem of why we are having these issues, and we can't even change administration. How are we going to change the problem at all?
Well, maybe one of the things you just pointed out is something in our system that we could look at. If we exist in a system where only one group can affect change, why is that? I'm going to let Dr. Wyatt transition us here, because we do want to get to what I think is what you all want to talk about. The purpose of this opening was to contextualize what has happened on our campus within a larger concept, our culture.
So what we have here is we're often really important to point out that maybe one of the biggest other failures of leadership is to instantly view a problem as an individual problem as opposed to a system problem. And we were talking about that just a minute ago, that the technical problem needs to be fixed first, and I don't think so. I think systems are really huge, and until we do what needs to be done to change them, the technical problems will never go away. I kind of view it this way. Let's suppose we have a fertile seedbed for, in this case, sexual harassment. And we have a shoot come up, a really big weed comes up, like the case a couple of, that was kind of the precipitating incident for this meeting. We go pull the weed out. Well, we've taken care of that, but the system that produced it is still here. We haven't changed it, and we'll just be pulling weeds forever. So how do we change our culture? And that's more than firing somebody, which may or may not need to happen. So let's, just a real quick bit here then, just so that we know we're all on the same sheet. What exactly is a system, and what are some of the forces that are maybe at work here? Well, a system consists of, as written up here on the board, people who occupy positions. We have behavioral expectations. We have networks of relationships that are involved here. We have a bureaucratic organizational structure with a hierarchy. We have within this, any kind of a human group, there is a strong desire to conform, to not rock the boat, and often one that has been mentioned, towards silence. So those are some of the things that are really important that I think that we address as we look for possible solutions.
What is it about ESU as a system that might lend itself to silencing? Talk about us as a system a little bit here. We've said we've observed silencing. What is it about us as a system that creates a rich climate for silencing?
We have students who have very little knowledge about what Title IX is or what the Clery Act is. And when they're victimized, they don't get a mentor. They don't get somebody who can stand by them and help them through the process, who's familiar with these kinds of things and familiar with the trauma associated with any kind of sexual harassment or assault. So here we expect possibly a brand new freshman on campus to navigate all of this on their own with administrators who have power and control over them.
And professors.
And professors who may be in the problem, and administrators who have power and control over them as well. So there's a problem with power and control, and we need to be able to have advocates and mentors to help people.
So here's a possible solution: advocates, mentors, a support system that we need that we do not have now. Is that
Why don't we have a culture of advocacy? Why don't we?
I want to thank Amy and Mallory and Gary for doing this. Hi, I'm the advisor of the Bulletin, and let me make it clear that my remarks here will be as advisor of the Bulletin. One of the things that has not been said here that is maybe on the back of people's minds is that one of the things that has worked in the system that we have here on campus is the independent press, the campus newspaper, brought this to light by publishing Jane's story. I would like to congratulate the student journalists and also congratulate Jane for her courage. So, thank you all.
Hi, I had my hand up earlier, but it wasn't seen. For the what can we do, I think the whole administration thing has been kind of hit on the head. So I'm gonna say the one thing that I can do. I think as students we're really good at being reactive, but like we do everything for the victim. But I think the thing that they would prefer most was to not be a victim. So stopping things beforehand and being observant to your surroundings of what's happening. So I wanted to say right now that my name is Huleek McCoy, that's Hewleek. Last name is McCoy, McKoy. Find me on Facebook, send me a friend request, I will accept it. If you ever feel unsafe about anything, message me. I don't care if I'm in a class, I don't care if I'm asleep. I will be there to help you. With this kind of we need to be sure not problems. We need to stop things before they happen. And men, this is your problem too. I'm sorry if you think that, I'm just going to be there for the lady if they fall. One, you are also a potential victim. And two, you need to be there to stop it beforehand. Be the muscle. Don't be afraid of what your friends are going to think about you. If someone's making a joke that's not okay, you stop it right then. Don't let it grow and let people think it's okay because it's not. So we need to open ourselves up to help people. So I challenge everyone else to also be that ear. Again, I'm Huleek McCoy. If you need me, please message me. I don't care if we've never talked before. I will be there to help you. Thank you.
We just heard someone say, I do believe policies are needed, prevention is needed, but I have a role to play. I have a role to play as an advocate. We heard several people say we lacked advocacy on this campus. Why might that be? As a system, as Dr. Wyatt said, we're pretty hierarchical. We tend to look for hierarchies to solve our problems. Create an advocacy structure. We just saw somebody offer to be an advocate.
All right, up here.
I think as we talk about systemic issues, I think that a series of technical solutions along with adaptive solutions can be joined together to solve a problem. So I think as we talk about policies and say that policies don't matter, I think that the contribution of these policies unintentionally contribute to the problem. So I think that we all have some sort of platform that we could use to better our university as a whole. And so I think that our university policy manual contains policies at ESU that hold students to a higher standard than tenured professors and that they need to be reviewed. For instance, if the perpetrator issues an appeal, they get the chance to have a hearing by a council of tenured professors, whereas those that report don't get a counsel at all. So when we talk about silencing the victim, that contributes to it as well, and so I think we need to review our policies.
Hi, somebody mentioned a question about advocacy here on campus, and we do have Thrive, which is a healthy relationship. And we do have 42 advocates that are trained in sexual assault here on campus, and I've seen many of them here. Could I ask them to go ahead and stand up if they are a member of Thrive? Because I see some that are here that are with Thrive. We do have some here for domestic violence and sexual assault. And we're located in the Student Wellness Center. We do presentations, we do education. So, we do have that here if people just utilize us.
Other comments?
When I'm looking at us as an institution, as Emporia State, I recognize that as a student I'm here to learn, and that's the university's primary objective, but I'm also not, I also recognize that to the university, I'm also a dollar sign. I recognize that the only way they exist is if I attend and pay money here to exist. So in going with secrecy and why the university would have a stake in silencing victims, I think that ties in because their livelihood is tied to their reputation. And if people come out and they allow victims to come out, damaging reputation, losing students, aka dollar signs for them, and then they could no longer be an institution. So I think it's just preserving their reputation.
Do you have any ideas about what to do about that?
Well, I know that you said that we are also the administrative, we are also institutions, but I, as a woman of color, don't particularly see myself in this institution. I know that I'm not represented here. I definitely don't feel represented here. So I think maybe one thing the administration can do, we can all do, is to hire more people of color, more women of color.
ESU as a social system, hierarchical, We just found out that there is more help through the Thrive organization. How many of you knew about that beforehand? That's good. How did you learn about it? Are we getting information to people that they need? How could we do that better? You see, this isn't focused on prevention or punishment, but it's an essential part of it, isn't it? Yes, policies are a part of it, but the whole picture needs to be looked at. How are people going to get the information they need to navigate the system, even if we fix it? This all needs to be a priority for us. It's not one or the other.
Hi, I think that something that we're doing a lot of is we're focusing on blaming the victim, but we're also kind of, students blaming faculty and faculty or administration blaming students. And I think that we kind of need to recognize that, seeing us as more of a community rather than a social system or an institution is really important. And that recognizing, as you shared, that there are issues within administration with sexual harassment. And as you shared your story, there are issues within the student body as with sexual harassment. So I think seeing it as more things that we can be doing, taking it more seriously if it's not just administration versus the student body. So your issue wasn't brought up, and maybe that was because it was student body against student body instead of administration versus student body. So I just...
We have somebody back here who hasn't spoken and has their hand up.
I think one of the things that frustrates me most is that we only talk about this when it happens. I guarantee a couple months from now, nobody's going to be talking about this. And I think one of the main things that we can do is just, we need to bring it up. And this would fix a lot of the education problems, a lot of the problems with silence, if we're just talking about this. And I don't mean just like with your friends. I mean mandatory meetings, encouraged meetings among faculty, among staff, with your advisor, in the dorms, with your RA. If we just have meetings where we talk about this, where we get information out, where we encourage it, I think that could go a long way.
Hello. So we were talking about advocacy skills earlier and what we can personally do. I'm a member of the on-campus mental wellness group, Hornets for Hope. It's also a suicide awareness and suicide prevention group, which I've personally experienced and gone through. So as we talk a lot about the stigma and the harms and how instances of rape and sexual harassment, just the incident itself is often what courts focus on, not just stigma that is internalized or the problems that go with being a rape survivor. In debate as well, we talk about our personal stories, me and my partner, who's right here actually. Shout out to Gage Simpson, who broke his leg. So definitely, as far as advocacy goes, joining student groups like GSA, like Hornets for Hope, are really cool ways where students can talk to other students. Some groups also have advisors, some don't. So I definitely recommend checking out groups like Hornets for Hope, because instances like rape can really kind of throw your whole identity into question. So it's important that students join groups on campus. Less alone time is usually good for mental health as well. When it comes to issues like this, the more you can spend time with other people, other survivors, it can kind of help you go through that process of trying to get your life back together.
I have two things. One, we had a speaker come last semester who was absolutely amazing and talked about how the language we use as a society just continues on this stigma about sexual assault. And I think it would be great if we could have more speakers like that to speak about this topic and to just put that out there within our community. But my next thing is, I think it's really easy for administration to look to us as students and say, you're a community, what are you going to do? But as students, we look to the administration in a position of power and able to make change, and they're not doing anything.
Back to what we can do as students and as a community, there needs to be consequences for the perpetrators. We need to fire those who assault, and we also need to stop being friends with people who say gross things and who contribute to rape culture. We have to know that it's not okay and that they are the problem.
Oh, okay.
So one thing that I realized when I was reading through the policies about sexual harassment and specifically ESU's policy is it does require faculty to go through training, but in there it doesn't specify what kind of training, how often. So professors that are looking at tenure, they've been here for a long amount of time trying to get that, but I think we need to update our policies to hold those professors more accountable to getting that education, that way it's in the back of their mind.
Yeah, I want to add to the woman there that said that I'm hearing a lot of talk about what the students can do and a lot of vitriol directed toward the administration. As faculty, I want to speak to faculty and what faculty can do. If you look at national statistics, faculty on student sexual harassment and violence is a significant problem. And let's recognize that the event we're talking about that precipitated this meeting today is an incident of faculty and student. My experiences with faculty, the education problem starts there. When I talk to faculty on this campus, they're in no position to teach their students about what it's like to live in rape culture, what it's like to try and navigate a place where sexual assault and harassment happens. What I tend to see is a lot of denial that it's a real problem, suggestion to sweep it under the rug. So I see that there are a lot of faculty here. We can point at administration and we can hope our students do better than us, but we got to start doing better as well, because people better on this campus don't know what's happening.
I think we make a mistake if it's faculty or administration and students, faculty and staff. We haven't said much about staff at all here, and that is a huge part of this equation.
One thing that I want to go back to is the metaphor that Dr. Wyatt used about the pulling the weeds out of the farmland before you can effectively treat the soil. As someone who has grown up in an agrarian state, I know very few farmers that simply do one thing and focus on one thing. And I have to criticize the administration's philosophy of saying that we can only handle one technical problem and one adaptive problem at a time. If any governmental system in the history of humanity ever focused on a situation like that, then this world would be plunged in the same chaos from which it was born.
No, no. That's correct.
We have a lot of ways of work avoidance, though. I take your point. What is it about us as a system that lends itself to work avoidance, avoiding that work of addressing this head on? What are we doing instead? I mean, all of us. I mean the faculty, I mean the staff, I mean the students, and yes, I mean the administration.
I would just emphasize too, I hear you, but I'm really sure that if my 60 years has taught me anything, that it's a bigger problem than just an individual case. And dealing with an individual case is a very important thing to do. But those cases come out of an environment and a culture that we need to address too. It isn't an either or.
I would argue that one of the things that makes work avoidance really easy was already brought up here. That we know that these stories will go away, right? Or that's the expectation. That if we're not hearing about it, it's not happening. That was brought up. This sense of continuing to make progress is not typical in our culture. To continue to make progress on something. We tend to focus on things when they are crises, don't we? Are we as a campus going to do something differently? How are we as a culture going to continue making progress on this?
I think that sometimes we forget that victims are actually people, and that as a college campus, what we're supposed to think about is school and academics, but this is a community here, and faculty is included in that, and staff and administration. We're all included in that, and we have to remember that things can't work if we're separated. We have to go together as a team, and we need to remember that it's not just about learning. It's a college is an experience, and ESU wants to provide a wonderful experience for everybody, which for my part, I haven't had to deal with any sexual harassment, thankfully, yet here at ESU, but that doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, yeah.
I'm going to stand up. 3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to a conference and watch Joe Biden speak about sexual assault. And one of the things that I think is really preventing society as a whole from speaking out and saying anything is fear. We're scared to say anything. We want to hide behind our friends. We want to hide behind staff. We want them to say something. We don't want to be the ones to say anything because we don't want to be aligned with the people who are saying anything. And Joe's biggest thing was, it's on us. It's on us to stop it. We can't rely on accusing other people. We can't rely on telling administration to do something. We can't rely on telling anyone else to do something. It has to come from ourselves. We have to be the people behind it who are doing anything. And we can sit here all day and say the administration needs to fix something, but ultimately it does come down to us and what you guys have been saying the whole time. It comes down to what we can do as students, and as the biggest organization on campus, the student body comes down to the power that we have and the power that we have in our organizations to change what we're doing.
Sorry, you have to hear from me again. Does it change what we think about sexual assault and sexual harassment if I say it is a crime that is punishable by prison, by jail time? Our society, for some reason, does not think that sexual assault and sexual harassment and rape is a crime when it is. 97% of perpetrators do not go to jail. 1 in 4 women, and these are the ones who only report it, will be raped or sexually assaulted on campus, and that's not including men or the ones who don't report it. I would say that it's much higher than that. We don't have a drug problem on this campus. When there's an alcohol problem at any of the fraternities, it is shut down. Why? Because underage drinking, drugs, that's a crime. And anyone who is associated with it, and anyone who is trying to help anyone smuggle those drugs or anything like that, or be a part of bringing that alcohol in and giving it to minors, gets in trouble, and it is shut down so quickly on this campus. But for some reason, sexual assault, rape, harassment isn't considered a crime. And does it change your outlook if I say that it's a crime?
We have a couple, thank you. We have a couple volunteers who are going to hand out some slips of paper. We would like to use that blue sheet of paper for you to start writing down some of the questions, and you have some of the information you still need. What information do we need to make more progress on this? We intend to take all of what we receive, publish it in an open email to everyone of what it is that we as a campus need to know. The facts we need to know, the policies and procedures we need to know. What do we need to know more about? That's your blue sheet. You also have a non-blue sheet. I guess the color is cream. On that sheet, we'd like to know about you. We'd like to know what you think you can contribute to helping us make progress on this. What are you interested in contributing? You can add your name if you want to. We would like to collect, and we've heard some examples here today. We would like to collect from our group what we can offer to make progress on this and publish that as well.
One of the things, okay, blue is what information you feel you need, that you would like to have to be more informed on this topic and how to move forward.
Right.
And the goldish, beigeish paper is for you to list maybe strengths that you would personally be willing to bring to the effort, things like that. One of the things that as you're doing this that we're very mindful of is you, like many of us, have all had the experience, some event happens, everyone gets all excited about it. We hold forums like this. And 3 weeks, a month, 2 months later, it didn't matter that we met one. So our question is now, how do we avoid that? What do you see, what can we agree upon perhaps, or what are some of your ideas for what are the next steps we can take to transform our campus culture? What are some ideas that you have about that? How do we not let this just be a meeting that we had, that a month from now it won't matter when the next crisis comes along that's maybe on a different topic, so this is forgotten.
We anticipate that we will need to have some more conversations. One of them might need to be devoted entirely to answering the questions you have and the information you need. We might need a whole meeting just for that. We might need another conversation to talk about advocacy, about the ways that we want to build things in our culture that we don't have. That's another conversation as well. We'd like to find out what we need and what we have and keep this going.
So think about that on the kind of cream color paper, right? That if these are some of the things that we need on campus that you all have identified, right? We need these things. Then what could you do to help make that happen, right? So when we could say we're going to hold the administration accountable, right? And we can do that. We can use our resources. We can advocate things we're already a part of. But how can we create this on campus, right? That's what really I'm asking. How do we get what we need then?
And make it so this meeting doesn't end. This is just the beginning of a conversation on how to transform campus.
I know we've talked a lot about what we can all do as a community, and we've been here for over an hour now, about 4:39, and I think this has been a very good forum for people to voice their opinions and have their voice heard, and I think that's really amazing, and I think this is a really good start to fixing this problem. But I personally am a little disappointed in this forum because I think for as much good as it is doing, I think it still has not addressed at all the issue that a lot of students have and a lot of fears that a lot of people have. And I know that we're not trying to focus on quick fixes because it is a community issue and it is a societal problem and it's something that is going to keep popping up. But you've made comments about like, oh, if you just pull out one bad weed, then it's just going to keep popping back. But at the same time, I just don't think it's a bad start to have this discussion. Is Brian Schrader still employed on this campus? Are we still employing sexual predators? And I just think that issue specifically has really been avoided today, and I personally am very disappointed in that, because for as much good as we've done here today, I still think there's a lot that has been avoided and has not been answered. And I know that you just mentioned having more forums for this, but personally, I'm just feeling a little disappointed with what we've discussed so far.
What would you like, if there are other things you would like to say, you still have.
And I guess my main question, is there a sexual predator still employed on this campus? I am a psychology major, and that is a man that, if he still is employed here, I will have to work with. I'm also a sexual assault survivor. I'm a rape survivor. Is that someone that you all are telling me that I'm going to have to work with for my time here at ESU?
Don't forget you said failures too.
Just a quick, to offer a quick, tough interpretation. I'm familiar with these leadership principles. I know them pretty well. I appreciate them. I've advocated on behalf of them by myself. I think they empower people. But also, I wonder or worry that there's a hidden message in there that it's up to you to fix these problems, and that lets everybody else off the hook. And I worry if some people in this message or in this room are getting that message that they are the problem for not fixing it. And I know that's not your intent, But I can certainly understand how some people might think that.
Thank you, I can too.
So that would be victim blaming at its worst, wouldn't it? That's not what we're trying to do.
Why are you purporting that rhetoric?
What's that?
Why are you purporting that rhetoric?
What
that
rhetoric?
This is on us and we shouldn't hold administration accountable
Oh.
for our actions and complicity of the system that you critique.
We are not saying administration's not accountable.
But you question whether or not Dr. Schrader or Mr. Schrader is a sexual predator. And that just means that you are watering down the story that the Bulletin has published.
I don't remember questioning that. I think we're trying to get more
You said
progress.
Dr. Schrader may or may not be a sexual predator.
Did I use his name? I don't think I did. I think I'm talking about cases that
Mallory?
should have been named. Yeah, go ahead.
Gary, Amy, was your intent coming here today to explain or defend what happened in the case of Jane?
No.
So your intent, the way I understood it, was to try to implement what you know as faculty in residence for here. If there are people in this audience that want to know those answers, I would suggest that you guys ask administration to address you.
Yes.
Good start.
I just feel that administration owes us an explanation. We shouldn't have to go to them and ask for one, and we shouldn't have to find out on social media or through a bulletin that these circumstances have taken place on our campus that we're paying to be here.
I would just like to say, as a psychology major, I was not only disappointed to hear this, but to hear that after this occurred, he became all of our advisors.
Yes.
And so people that did not have to have contact with this man beforehand now are forced to. And I realize there's been an email sent out about that, about meeting with other people, etc. But that should not have happened. That is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
I think that I agree with a lot of the discord that's kind of happening here, mostly because we all came with an idea, I guess, of how we expected this to go, what voices we were expecting to hear. And I think that in this age where you see people who are young and are wanting to tear down systems and to actually advocate against injustices like this, that when we say time's up, we mean time's up. So it means time's up on bad hiring practices. It means time's up on administration not being transparent with their processes. It means time's up on finding out information from the bulletin rather than from the people that we work with or the people who supervise us or advise us. It means time's up on sexual assault on campus. Time's up on silencing victims. Time's up on advocating for victims to be complacent in their processes until they receive some sort of due process from people who don't look like them and aren't as young as they are. It means time's up on silencing our international students and their processes, because that's a whole entire intersection of conversations. And that to me underlies the problem, is that when we are not discussing the actual problem at hand, there are so many nuances that get left unsaid and undiscussed. Like, nowhere in this entire time that we spent together did we talk about the nuance of the power dynamic of having somebody who is your advisor and your teacher also be in control of your grade, and also be someone who is of America, of here, with rights, who has tenure, against someone who does not.
So I'm not a psychology major, but I am a sexual assault victim. When I was 17, I was sexually assaulted. I was held down and forced to perform sexual acts that I did not want. And what makes it even worse is just like the victim in this case, it was from someone I trusted. And although I myself have come to the conclusion that it was my fault, I still struggle with what more could I have done. You, the Kansas Leadership Center of Faculty and Residents, stated in the email sent to all ESU students, I quote, "A pivotal principle of the adaptive leadership model that we aspire to is that we do not look to authority to save us, we save ourselves. You have given us no option but to save ourselves now." My question to that statement, though, is that how are we supposed to save ourselves when victims like Jane have been silenced and are threatened to punishment for speaking out? When the person involved in this incident reported it, like she should have, the university shut her out and threatened punishment. To this I say, shame on you. And as I wrap up here, there are only 4 words that I have to say. Time is up, ESU.
Well, I've kind of got an update myself, health on this thing. Now, I'm not sure if this is entirely true, since I just heard this from another person earlier today. But I think that the Jane person that did report this, his afterwards, was actually punished for this.
Can anybody verify if that's true? So that might be something we need some more information about, right?
I'm not sure, but again, I'm not sure if this is entirely true. What I heard, I think she was actually charged like I think some odd $1,000 fine, and I think she might be, and I think that she may be being deported back to Korea.
Where did you hear it from, though?
It was another friend of mine.
Okay, I'm just going to speak as the only person in this room who has had contact about Jane on this issue, as I'm the only person in the bulletin who's ever even met her. I have daily conversations with her. I check in with her. This is not accurate, as far as I know.
I was unsure anyway. Thank you. I am not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, so can we talk about what we want to do next?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have to defend Webb to the young man that yelled at her. It is a huger issue than ESU. I've had issues with a professor in ICE similar to the one the victim experienced, and he got a pay raise. And in 3 years, he went to 3 different colleges, each getting a pay raise. I switched my major and switched schools. So this is a much larger issue, and I think Webb is trying to point that out.
I'd also like to say that it's a very personal issue for us, because I have a young lady in my life that does have to have that class. And boycotting, not going to class, is only costing her her grade. But there's an entire state right now on lockdown because their teachers are unhappy with their current situation. They're striking. If the students have to take a voice and take a stand, it needs to be something collective, and it needs to be done, and it needs to be done now, because otherwise these things are just going to go away and they're going to get shoved under the rug.
Other comments?
This might not make me the most popular person in the room, and I'm well aware of that. But I would like to point out that this issue is a complex one. And I understand that a lot of people came here today very upset, having a formed opinion already. And I'm not victim blaming here. I'm not placing that back on the girl at all. But I am saying that if you wanted to come here and get something, a quick fix, something that, validation that you're right, or just get angry, that's not how this issue is going to work, I don't think.
And I think we need to really understand the complexity of it, the fact that we are working with one perspective right now, the fact that there are a lot of different factors and a lot of different stakeholders in this. And if we just keep pointing fingers, if we don't have honest conversations, if we're not willing to look from different perspectives, exploring those tough interpretations, and yeah, that might mean that we have to look at things a different way, in a comfortable way, a way that might not register well with our personal opinions. I still think we need to do that because for me personally, I'm not comfortable with taking this one perspective, not having all the information, and just going on a tirade about it. So I look forward to further conversations, and I hope that we can look at this issue for the complex one that it is.
Back here in the back, yeah. On the board here, I see what's next, and I think what's next for this university is an administrative step. You talk about social systems, and us as a student body is a social system, and we've done our part because we've showed up here today and we've expressed our opinions and our worries and our fears. So I think what's next is no longer on us, but on an administrative note and an administrative level. You guys are really, you have what we want, and you guys are really the only people who can make that change. So I think that's what's next for this university and for us as a student body as a whole.
So I have a couple things, again. My first thing is that I think we are directing our anger towards the wrong people because the people who held this forum, they obviously want change because otherwise they wouldn't have held it. So I thank you guys for holding this forum. Backlash that you don't deserve. And my next thing is, I forgot it. I'm going to keep thinking about it, and I will come back to you.
As you leave, please leave us your comment sheets. Leave them on those chairs. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Wyatt, we have Megan up here.
Oh, okay, yes, okay.
Looking around as a student, I want to thank you all for being here because I think that leadership is risky, and I think that showing up is risky as a student right now. But I kind of want to reiterate, thanks Emily, we're going for the same thing. I want to thank the three that put this on because this was something they did not have to do. They wanted to give their voice a chance to be heard. So please thank them on your way out. This was risky for them, so that's all.
Every time we have one of these conversations, one of the things we talk about is that leadership is disappointing people at a level that they can tolerate. And you all have hung with it. Some good stuff has come up here. I know you're all disappointed. So am I. I have other things I want to talk about too. But we can't all get exactly what we want. We have to make progress together, and some progress has been made here. And as we collect what you're talking about and move forward, we will continue to go to meetings and work on task forces where we see that we have to compromise. Somebody needs to tell a story. That person needs to tell the story. That may not have been your agenda for the day, but that may need to happen. Let's keep making progress.
Let me just make one tiny comment, and then I'll promise I won't say anything more. I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of students about this issue. They've been very disturbed, very disappointed, all for very good reasons. I've also had an opportunity to talk to administrators at different levels of this university. Everybody really wants the same thing. Everybody really wants to work together. And I know it's hard, and there's blame, and that blame needs to be voiced, and people need to be pointed out, and policies need to be called out. But in the end, everybody really wants to make it work better. So, and I really thank all the students here for speaking their personal stories. It helps everybody when we hear that.
I feel like when something hits really close to home, it hurts a lot more. It gets us all fired up. It's like, oh, so this is happening at ESU now. Well, obviously the reality of the situation is it's not happening now. It's been happening. And people haven't been talking about it, and it's scary to talk about it. And there are a lot of people in this room right now that probably don't want to stand up in front of everybody and say, hey, this is my opinion, because they're scared of what consequences that might have on them. But don't sit here and say, oh, well, now that it's here at ESU, it's a problem.
it's been a problem. It's a problem everywhere, and we need to get it taken care of here at ESU, but after that, we also need to look at the broad picture. How do we take care of this, not just here at ESU, but in our society that thinks it's okay?
When I was reading the articles in the bulletin, I read it from a personal perspective, and then I read it from a professional perspective. It's hard to separate those two emotions sometimes, and as staff, it's difficult to feel comfortable enough in our environment to express our concerns without fear of punishment. I'm lucky enough to work in an office that I am able to do that, but one thing I thought about was, it's sad I didn't have to think about it, but if that line that was crossed, whatever line it was not enough to be terminated, what is the line? And also, what if it wasn't a student and it was another faculty member or a peer? Would that have mattered? Should it matter? Absolutely not. But I wonder what the consequences would have been that way.
So I remembered my second thing. I think, like you talked about teachers going on strike, they did it as a whole community. And I think part of the problem that this keeps happening at ESU is that the entire university isn't here. Because we're not a community that has the same values, obviously, because otherwise everyone would be here. Some people don't see this as a problem at our university. So for the students to be able to do something, it's almost impossible without everybody having that same viewpoint, and part of the problem is that everybody doesn't. So what are we going to do as a university to make it to where everybody sees it as a problem?
We've been given an opportunity, but it starts with each of us taking a really simple step. Before you leave, not only glad we're turning in the sheets, we're making a personal commitment. Let's make another one that's very doable. It may involve a risk. Before you leave here today, identify at least one person, faculty, staff, classmates, that you can talk to, that you trust. And if it involves taking a risk in trusting someone, do it. Find somebody, even if maybe you get out of the building, but find somebody before this day is over to talk to. Even if you're mostly the listener. Listeners are powerful sources.
There's something up on our manage, thank you so much. On our manage self sign, the very last item is take care of yourself. Please do that. There is a professional counselor here if anyone needs those services. And you do have this opportunity to make that connection before you go.
And regardless of how you felt it went today, we want to continue to move forward on this issue. We don't know what the answers are. We are willing to endure whatever it takes to continue to meet, to try things, talk to people, whatever it
I've never seen this many people get together and be willing to talk about this.
Yeah, that's great.
This is progress.
So thank you. And we're not
you are all our allies.
From our perspective, we're just starting, and we don't want to stop until we've made progress. Thank you.